BaseballTalkRadio.com presents MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week podcast talking all about your baseball stories that you may have missed during the week. And hello, everyone. Welcome to MLB This Week. It's the MLB This Week podcast, that is. And we're back after our Memorial Day break. And nice weekend. Hope everyone out there had a great weekend. How about you, Gary?
Yeah, Rich. Hi, everybody. Glad to be back and had a wonderful weekend. I hope that you did as well. And as you say, I hope everybody out there had a great weekend. And the weather's not so cooperative now on the Northeast where we are, Rich. But other than that, Sunday night, and here we are.
Yes, indeed. It's a great time to be back on the podcast after a nice week off. We're all freshened up, ready to go, and hope everybody paid their respects to the men in uniform and women, of course, in uniform across the country. Last weekend, of course, every year it seems like baseball really embraces this holiday more and more for the men and women in the service around the world, Gary.
Yeah, it was great to see all the servicemen and women on the in the ballparks last week, and always a great thing to see them there, get in for nothing, and of course, Major League Baseball came up with a special uniform, a hat and a jersey for the teams. So really, as you say, Rich, they're really embracing it. And I do miss the old doubleheaders though that we used to have on Memorial Day, and do miss that kind of stuff. And July the 4th, but this is the new wave with the single game. So, but they do a fine job, baseball, in embracing the military personnel.
Yeah, 2 for the price of 1. How could you go wrong with that? That's the good old days with the nice 2-for-1 ball games that they used to offer from time to time, especially around the holiday, like Gary had just mentioned. But a whole lot of baseball being played, and this is when kind of the meat of the season, the middle of the season, takes place now, Gary. This is a really great time to be a baseball fan from the 1st of June right on through. We've got about 6-7 weeks to the All-Star game now, and a lot of hot stove talk coming up in baseball. A lot of players just starting to move around. We saw a trade transpire. San Diego sent Mr. Shields over to Chicago to the White Sox to bolster their starting pitching, and that's sort of the first big move of the season on this, what's going to be a hot stove season.
Yeah, Rich, you're right. It's probably the first biggie trade, and he was really struggling a lot, Shields, out in San Diego, as everybody seems to be struggling out there now. But that could help out that White Sox staff. They did beat the Mets two games out of 3, but they were close games, and their pitching staff after Quintana and Sale is pretty weak. So this could give them a boost to get. He's an innings eater, if nothing else, but he's a pretty good pitcher. So it could help their chances. They've fallen down to 3rd place now in the division. So they could use a little boost, and they may have got it by acquiring Mr. Shields.
Yeah, and we'll stay on the AL Central for a second. Who could have predicted Cleveland? They rose out of the ashes. They're 31-24. They're ahead of the Central right now. Last 5 games, they're winners. And those, they go out and play Seattle for their next series. Convincing win this afternoon against the Kansas City Royals. They beat them 7-0. So the Indians have sort of found themselves here. As you said, the Sox drifted into 3rd. And Kansas City is all of a sudden starting to turn the table around. They're only a game and a half back behind the Cleveland Indians, playing pretty good ball at 30 wins and 26 losses.
Well, I think they came into that series a game up, and they've lost 4 in a row now, Kansas City. and Cleveland is 1-5. So that's where that game and a half comes in. Really, as you said, Rich, Cleveland, quite a surprise. But, they do have a good pitching staff there. So everybody was praising that, and they're getting a little bit of hitting, so playing very good ball. And, of course, Terry Francona is there. He's doing a great job, as always.
Yes, indeed. Over in the AL East, it's Baltimore still on top out there in a dead heat just about with the Boston Red Sox right now. Both are tied for first place as we're doing the podcast here tonight on Sunday night, June the 5th. Toronto right behind them, 31-27 record, 2.5 games back. And then the Yankees, not making too much of a good season so far this year. They're 26-30, a full 5 games back. And I'm suspecting that a lot of Yankee fans are starting to grumble around New York.
There's a lot of grumbling around here. But they're just not a very good team, Rich. I mean, no matter how do you slice it, they're just not good. They're very old, and they're really showing their age. And they're a team in transition now. They're trying to transition to the youth. They built that bullpen up, but I'm not sure I agree with the way they did it. You can't beat Betances, Miller, and Chapman at the end there, but he's only a 1-year rental, Chapman, so he'll be gone. So if they're smart, the Yankees, they would take the chance and trade him off. They could, hasten their redevelopment, and they'll have some contracts coming off to Shearer and Beltran, I think, this season, and maybe Heyward next year. So once they get rid of those contracts, they can fill in some spots with young people and free agents. But right now, they're not doing a darn thing. Shearer isn't hitting at all. A-Rod's up and down or injured, so he's showing his 40-plus years of age. And so the Yankees are a team that are definitely in trouble. The pitching is not very good at all. They have a couple of young guys that they thought would be a lot better, and they're really struggling. Pineda, Severino, and the other guy that's name escapes me right now. But they've struggled all year with the starting pitching. Tanaka and CC Sabathia, believe it or not, have been very solid. But after that, they're hurting. And as you say, you have to beat to the bullpen to get, to make that pay off with a lead. And they're just not hitting either. Their offense is not that good. So they're a team with a lot of problems, but nothing that can't be fixed. It's just that it's very hard for the Yankees to say, to throw in the towel and say we're going to rebuild, because their fans just aren't built that way.
Well, out in the West, it's Texas with a handy lead out there, 34-22. The Texas Rangers, winners of their last 3. Seattle, 31-25, 3 games back off the pace of the Rangers. And then the Houston Astros are starting to make a ever so slight move. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, winners of their last 3, and they're up to 28-30. So we might start to see them pick up the pace a little bit as we get in towards the middle of the season here. Again, a great time to be a fan of the game, and it's probably the time where most of the fans start going out to the stadiums. The schools are pretty well getting near closing, some of the grammar schools and all, some of the colleges already out. So a lot of fans are going to be taking to the stadiums to watch some great games in the coming weeks. Yeah,
that's for sure, Rich. As you say, the schools will be closing in another few weeks, and kids will go more to the games, and so it's a fun time. And how about those Houston Astros? Huh? They're playing some good ball now, closing in. They're only 7 games out, so there's always a chance. And Rich, what about on National League East? Huh? That's going to be a dogfight there. The top 4 teams really in striking distance. The only team really out of it is the Atlanta Braves at 17 games out already in this young season.
Yeah, they definitely have tanked the year. Mark them down for that. But just caught a glimpse of this. The Reds are 19 games back, so they don't have as bad a record as the Braves, almost as bad, but they're 19 games back over in the Central. But as you said, yeah, the NL East is going to be a dogfight all year. The Nationals and the Mets so far are providing a great back and forth battle here. They're trying to keep up with one another, obviously. And then, as you said, the Marlins, a close third behind, 4 games back. They're within striking distance all of a sudden. And the Phillies are almost at 500. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time in the National League East, especially if you're a National or a Met fan.
So, Rich, let me ask you this. If somebody told you the Phillies would finish at 500 or a couple of games below at the beginning of the season, would you take that?
Yeah, I would take it as a Phillies fan. We've had nowhere but up to go for the past couple seasons. And, we've seen some more bright spots out of them this year, a lot more younger players, some better play on the field. Of course, their last 10 games, they've only won 2. So they've really tanked in the last 10 games. Whether they can recover or not is still a question we're going to have to learn later. But, yeah, I would be more than happy with a 500 season.
Yeah, I think you'd have to, because a lot of people really picked them to be pretty awful. And they're playing a lot better than anybody thought. And I think they've got some good young players there. It's just going to be, let's just see where you weed out guys and keep guys. And you know how it works. So we'll have to hope for that. And how about those Cubbies? They keep on winning. Oh, they lost today to Arizona. Cubbies way out, 9.5 game lead over those Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah, the Cubs are practically running away with the NL Central at this point. 22-8 at home, 17-8 in the on the road rather. So yeah, the Cubs are your team to beat, I think, in the National League going forward for this last couple months of the season. Anyway, we'll have to see if they can keep up this pace. They're on a pace to win 110 games or more, with only 16 losses here in the month of June. As you said, Pittsburgh 9.5 back, St. Louis 10.5 back. I don't really think either of these teams are going to give them a run for the division. And out west, it's the San Francisco Giants. It is an even year, so maybe a lot of those players and the fans out there know something.
Yeah, they're just amazing, and he's even every other year. And I kind of wonder if it's like a hangover, a World Series hangover. You go to one year and you win it, and then you're not so good the next year, and then you reboot and come back 2 years later. So it's interesting, isn't it, how that happens?
It's amazing that it's been happening with such repetition over the last couple of years, but a team just can't do that with on its own. It's got to be something else, the baseball gods or something working in San Francisco's favor, because as we all know, it's a struggle from year to year for some teams, not necessarily that they can turn it off and turn it on, but amazing there.
And Rich, I'm looking at the wild cards. If you were to look at them now, and with Baltimore and Boston tied, one would win the division right now. One would be the wild card. Cleveland would be the division, and Texas the division. And again, Seattle would be the one wild card playing Baltimore, Boston. If the season ended down, that's in the American League, of course. And in the National League, it would be the Cubs, the Nationals, and the Giants winning the division. And the Mets are a game and a half up in the first wild card slot. And the second slot would be between Pittsburgh and LA, who are in a tie right now. So Pittsburgh's actually ahead by 2 percentage points. So interesting. It's a little early to start watching that sort of thing. But It's interesting to see the teams behind those teams then, because you got Miami and St. Louis, and there's your Philadelphia. They're only 2.5 games out of the second wild card, and Milwaukee is even up there, and nobody gave them a chance this year either. So very fascinating to take a look at those things, even though it's so early in the season, but it's fun to take a look.
Yeah, and I never even thought that they used to put them up this early, the wild card standings. I thought that usually went up around July, but I guess with this age of stats and everything, like you said, a lot of people like to take a look at that and see what's going on with it.
And I guess it doesn't hurt attendance because like the cities that don't get as much, like Miami, they can say, "Hey, we're in the wild card chase. We're only a half a game out of the wild card." So I guess it gives them something. And look, somebody's going to put up the stats. So I guess if one person mentions it, like we did, every news organization is going to put up something to that effect, so you can follow it. So
that's for sure. Well, our first story up this week on MLB This Week, your independent podcast talking all about baseball. A Chicago Cub, no less, Jason Heyward.
Well, Jason Heyward was, he got that big contract from the Cubbies, and he was quick to share the wealth after he signed that 8-year deal. According to Bleacher Report, one of Heyward's first moves after locking up the new deal was to pay for teammate David Ross to get a hotel suite big enough for Ross's whole family for every road trip of Ross's final MLB season. Ross and Heyward were teammates for 3 years back in 2010 and 2012 when both played for the Braves. Heyward said Ross served as a mentor to him back then. So the hotel suite idea was a big league version of a thank you note for all Ross had done for Heyward during Heyward's early years in the MLB. Heyward said, "I know how special it is to have teammates. He was my first 3 years in Atlanta. You don't take it for granted." Ross, who plans to retire after this season, told Bleacher Report that the gesture moved him to tears. As a father of 3 children, ranging in age from 7 years old to a newborn, Ross said the space is invaluable because it allows him to comfortably spend time with his family during the lengthy baseball season. So a nice gesture by Justin Heyward towards his good buddy David Ross, who's calling it quits after this year.
A very nice story there. And of course, Heyward signed an 8-year deal with the Cubs for a reported $184 million. So yeah, he could probably pay for those suites with some of that interest that he's got earning in the bank. But yeah, great story there. Baseball players taking care of one another.
Yeah, he's got some change left over that he can throw a few coins down there.
I was watching a game last night from LA, and it was interesting to hear Vin Scully call a game. I can listen to Vin Scully call any baseball game any day of the week. He'll tell you 100 stories about every baseball player that comes up to bat. He was hilarious last night, and I have to tell you this story real quick. He was talking about the Atlanta Braves pitcher, Bud Norris, who he said, and Bud Norris has a particular way he puts his pants on when he pitches game day. He puts both legs in at the same time into his pants legs and pulls them and pulls his pants up. So it was a hilarious story. And he says, well, if you don't believe it, he said, try it sometime. So it was a hilarious story there. That was just one of the probably 100 different stories I heard over an hour and a half of listening to the Dodger baseball. But
yeah, I could say, I've never been a real big Scully fan, but look, he's done a great job and is a great ambassador for the sport. And I did listen to a little bit of that last night, especially when he saw that baby. I thought he was gonna in the stands there. He was oohing and ahhing. So
yeah.
But he's been around a long time. It's unbelievable when you think about it. 67 years, and I don't know if we spoke about it on this show, but he's really the end of the line for the old time announcers.
Yeah.
Really don't have any more of those guys. They're all gone. Ernie Harwell, Red Bobber, Mel Allen, all the guys that we grew up with, Bob Murphy, Lindsey Nelson, Ralph Kiner, they're all gone, and he's really the last connection, and he's probably the last connection to New York baseball on a whole.
Yeah.
There's some players still around, Willie Mays and whatnot, but he goes back to the Brooklyn Dodgers, so he's that link, really, if you think about it, with the Dodgers from Brooklyn to L.A. and that whole golden era of New York baseball. He's the last link to that.
Yeah, and he's the last, as you said, the old school type broadcaster. Very entertaining. I'll miss him after this season when he retires, of course. But over in Texas, on our second story of the evening here, a gentleman had passed away recently, and his widow actually was left with a lot of folders of baseball cards. Now, she had no idea what a collection her husband had going. The gentleman had amassed this collection from San Antonio between the 1940s and 2007.
Wow.
Yeah, she had a Bible study class where she happened to mention this to someone. She didn't really know what to do with all these baseball cards and had no idea of the worth of them. The person that she told at the Bible study class put her in touch with an expert who said the collection was, quote, staggering. He is now auctioning off the cards and expects at least $100,000 from the different cards. Of course, the majority of the money will go to the family, he promises. So it was just a treasure trove of book after book, collection after collection of old school baseball cards from the 40s right on through the early 2000s. They had a Mickey Mantle graded card in amongst that collection, and just thousands of cards that he had collected. So word to the wise out there, some of these cards are worth a good deal of money.
And that was the good old days, Rich, when they used to pose for the cards. Remember those pictures where you get the batter would be standing there like this?
Yeah, not the action photo.
Yeah, the fielders would have they'll be, on the sidelines and posing with the glove open like they were in fielding position. I miss those days. These action pictures nowadays they use just isn't the same. Those were so corny sometimes. They were great, the catches like this.
Yeah.
Target up in a crouch position. They were great. They were great. I love those old 50s and early 60s cards. And boy, this collection goes back to the 40s. There's got to be some great cards in there.
Yeah, there was leather-bound books with all kinds of, middle of the road cards. I'm talking $3,000 to $5,000 cards in there. So yeah, the lady had no idea of the worth of all of these cards that her husband had left behind for her. So just another great story here about baseball cards, collectors, and sometimes how they make it to the market.
Yeah, it's just amazing when you hear these stories, and I think mine all got tossed away.
Yeah, where did all our baseball cards go? Mine from the early 70s, but
somewhere I have like a 58 or 59 Mickey Mantle, but like an idiot, I was a kid and I glued it to like a loose leaf page to make like a scrapbook, because when I started in baseball, there was no Mets team, it was just Mickey Mantle and the Yankees. So everybody was a Mickey Mantle fan. I mean, come on, So somewhere I have that card. Look, there's a couple of cards, actually a 60 and a 61, I think, Mantle, but they're all glued, so they're not really worth anything.
Well, MLB This Week is your weekly talk show all about baseball. We're an independent show, not sponsored by Major League Baseball or any Major League team. You can download our show on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, MLBThisWeek.com, of course. And you can also find us on YouTube, Google Plus, and at baseballtalkradio.com. It's the home of great baseball talk, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's 30 some odd teams on the site, always talking all about baseball. So check it out. You can find us there. Follow us on Twitter at MLBThisWeek. If you'd like to drop us an email, just send it to talk@MLBThisWeek.com, and we'll actually bring it up on a future edition of this program.
And if you'd like to support the show, you can do that too by going to patreon.com/MLBThisWeek and become a patron of the show and help us out. We're still waiting for that first one to come. So you can be the inaugural patron of the show, and we'd really like for you to do that and give us a little hand here as we continue on.
That would be awesome to get our first Patreon follower. And like we said many shows ago before, some of the other podcasts have 100 followers. They all give $1 or $2 a month, and that's all it takes. You register your PayPal address or a debit or credit card, and they take care of the rest, and we would appreciate it. So why don't you make it this week that you join our official crew here with us here on MLB This Week. Gary, you have our next story up. Kind of a vindictive story where the Marlins are going to sue a season ticket holder.
Yeah. There's always something in the wacky world of the Marlins. It was reported that the Miami Marlins had sued a season ticket holder, Mickey Axelban, alleging that he reneged on the second year of a 2-year season ticket agreement. Axelban, who'd been a season ticket holder with the Marlins since their inaugural season in 1993, claimed that the Marlins reneged, first eliminating amenities which they promised upon the move to Marlins Park and failing to deliver on others. Doesn't seem like the best thing to do, Rich. You're in the entertainment business. I don't think you should be suing your fans, but according to the Miami News report, this seems to be a pretty par for the course for Jeffrey Loria and the Marlins, as they've sued at least 9 season ticket holders and luxury suite owners since 2013. They were also locked in litigation with 2 stadium vendors. The concessionaires claim that the Marlins induced them to pay for big rights fees in order to set up business inside Marlins Park by promising big crowds, only to fail to deliver on those promises and to see the vendors go out of business or be unable or unwilling to pay what the Marlins demanded. The story goes deep on Axelban's dispute with Miami and that of a pizza vendor. Overall, paints a portrait of Miami Marlins club, which doesn't seem to give a crap about fans or its business, and only the bottom line. Of course, it's trying to pose as a civic institution so it can get tax dollars for its big stadium and rights fees from potential vendors. Now that they have the stadium, however, and that the ink is dry on those deals, they're portraying themselves like any other company entitled to enforce their business deals in any way necessary. And legally they can, Rich. There's nothing that says they can't. But, again, it doesn't look good if you're in this entertaining business and you're suing the customers and the vendors, for that matter, that help supply that entertainment.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the vendors here, as I'm reading this, and I hadn't heard of this story prior to you telling it here on the podcast, but yeah, one of the businessmen who went into bankruptcy after his Sir Pizza franchises failed at the Miami ballpark said, quote, "You bamboozled us for this ballpark, and now you have the audacity to sue a small businessman. I lost it all. I lost my business, and you're coming after me?" End quote. But yeah, that's just amazing that the team has sunk to an all-time new low, so to speak.
and they've never really drawn there. It's really quite a shame because it seems like a nice ballpark, but they just can't seem to get the people in. And even when they were winning, that's not to say that they don't have loyal fans. I mean, they have groups of fans that are loyal. Any club does, even somebody that's really not drawing at all. But they just have trouble filling that ballpark, and it's really quite a shame. This past weekend with the Mets being there, there seemed to be more Met fans than Marlins fans almost. So they really have. I don't know what the answer is. How do you get people in? Maybe it's their marketing department, but this guy Loria is, I don't know what to say.
and some of these ticket plans aren't your cheap $1,000 or $2,000 a year plans. One of the ticket plans of the persons of being sued is $24,000 for a 2-seat package, and that was nearly double the $13,000 he had spent with the final year at the Marlins when they were with Dolphin Stadium still. So, after a number of years, the prices go down. As you said, the stadium's not full. They have an agreement, but, do you sue somebody that backs out of it? That's the question.
And I mean, you talk about a guy that's been a season ticket holder since '93, since they came into inception. I mean, how do you turn around and do that? It's just kind of cheesy.
Yes, it is. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on that story. Of course, a lot of negative things coming out of that ballpark in Miami. I hope they don't lose that franchise over something like this, because I think they still need it down there.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I think because they have a beautiful ballpark and everything. But, maybe they can try to get a new owner down there or something, because this guy is just quite the nut job, I think. And Rich, baseball is making a return to the Olympics.
Yes, it is. For 2020 in Tokyo, baseball should be back on the list of games and events that are taking place in the 2020 Olympics. But some of the players in the MLB are not so sure that they'll be a part of it. Los Angeles Dodgers ace Clayton Kershaw said, quote, "It's not going to happen. I don't think it's fathomable." And Astros shortstop Carlos Correa wasn't sure if he'd play for a gold medal, even if he could. He said, 2020 will be my year before free agency, and we'll see in 2020 what my situation is, and we'll go from there, according to him. So a lot of the clubs, a lot of the teams, rather, haven't made official comments on it yet, but some of the players have. Chris Bryant actually said he wore the USA jersey across his chest one time in college, and it was an awesome experience. It would be fun to do again, but he finds it hard to believe that baseball would take a 2-week pause in its schedule, especially when they're fitting 162 games into a 183-day schedule. So he kind of had some sort of a notion that it may not happen either. But I used to think that Olympics were for people that weren't professionals anyway. Isn't that the way it was supposed to be, Gary?
That's the way it was. The worst thing they did, I think, was when they brought in these professionals. Of course, you can argue that all these Soviet countries in the 70s and the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, East Germany and the USSR, those guys were really professional because they were the Red Army. They were in the army, but all they did was play hockey all the time. So, and the same thing with the East Germans with the swimming and whatnot. But, the days are gone, Rich, of the true amateur, really. Even in the U.S., they all have sponsorships now. They all have jobs that they do nothing at. I mean, it's not like, I remember when we were kids. I'm a little older than you, but when we were kids, guy might have a job as a woodworker or a car salesman or something, and then train after work. Those days are long gone. Now they all train, and so they're all quasi professional. But I'm not in favor of the professionals taking a 2-week thing to go to this. Even the WBC is a questionable thing. How many guys do we see get hurt and not be able to play at the beginning of a season from the WBC? And so it's the same kind of a deal. And I think the owners are going to step in and say, hey, we've invested too much in these guys, and there's too much money going out and too much money on the line coming in. Chris Bryant, what happens if he gets hurt? And misses the rest of the Cubs season with this thing. Sure, it's a couple of years away, but you know what I'm saying. That's going to hurt. Could hurt attendance. Could hurt everything. So I don't think MLB or the owners are going to go for it, especially for the top players, because they're just too valuable.
That's true. So we'll have to see where this goes. 2020, it's still approximately 4 years off. Last time I believe they played a medal baseball series in the Olympics was 1992. Did a lot of the major leagues attend that? So it'll be interesting to see what happens this time. Of course, they still will have baseball as a sport in the Olympics should the MLB choose not to participate. But I kind of think down the road that some of these players will. They could probably still carry on somewhat of the season even without a player or two on a team if they just ruled that only a couple players from each team could take part in the Olympics, so to speak, and that's all they would probably need. But it's going to be on the other side of the world too, so a lot of the Americans won't be able to see most of the games.
And that would California like it, or the Angels like it if Mike Trout's gone for 2 weeks in the middle of a pennant race? I don't know. The Mets wouldn't be happy if it was Jacob deGrom or Noah Syndergaard gone for a couple of weeks in the midst of a pennant race. I don't know. I just don't. And how do they work it with the qualifiers? I mean, who qualifies? These guys only go for the Olympics. I mean, just for an example, the World Baseball Classic is holding qualifiers, and they're going to be in Brooklyn this year in September. But, I don't think there's any, I don't know how many players are from Israel or Great Britain or Pakistan or Brazil. That's the 4 teams qualifying here. But I don't hear any professional players going. So who are the guys that are playing and going to qualify? And then you're going to throw them off the team when it's time, when the pros can come in? That doesn't seem right either. And it's the same thing in the Olympics, right? They have to qualify to get into the Olympics. And so if it's college or minor league players that participate in that, then you're going to throw them out because Mike Trout decided he was going to play? That doesn't seem fair either.
That's true. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I'm reading a report out of the Japan Times. It said Baltimore's Adam Jones thinks there are just too many obstacles for major leaguers to participate, and he kind of thinks it'll be some AAA guys going to the Olympics to represent the country, which would be fine too.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. Or collegiate guys.
Yeah, it would be different if a lot of the public could watch these games too, but they'll probably be going on at 7 a.m. when it's 7 p.m. Japan time. So it's going to be a hard thing just to watch a few of those games for most of us.
And I hate when they tape them and play it back, and you've heard it already 50 times on the, and saw the highlights.
Yeah.
And then they tell you, well, don't watch them. Well, what am I going to do? I'm watching this show, and you're telling me it's coming now with the cell phones. It comes across on your cell phone. So, yeah, I don't know.
We'll have to see what happens in this. And you have our next story up, going way back in time here before baseball, the ancient Egyptians.
Well, they would be proud of what some Cleveland Indians fans did about 10 days ago. On a Friday night, a group of creative Cleveland Indian fans were the clear winners of the game, even though the Indians lost, taking advantage of $2 beer night. And don't they ever learn, Rich? Remember the whole nickel beer night thing? I think that was in Cleveland. And they had the fights and the whole destruction and thing. But they had a $2 beer night, and fans built a 112-can beer pyramid in the stands. And there you go. There's a picture of it. If you're watching the video, photos of the impressive pyramid were captured, posted on social media before security forces from the stadium forced the fans to dismantle their work of inebriated art. But here's another view of it. Creativity reigns in Cleveland, Rich, as Indians fans on $2 beer night. I have to say, by the looks of things, they look like they enjoyed it. And it was light beer from Miller, so it was less calories. And it tasted great.
And that's a lot of money at the ballpark, all those beer cans.
Well, but it was $2 a night, Rich. So I'm shocked that they even sold beer cans.
Yeah, that's for sure. And just a compositional story here. This was just announced tonight. They actually had a bottle thrown at Ryan Heyward from the stands in Philadelphia in Saturday night's game. A fan hurled a bottle at him, did not hit him, but they used to ban bottles from the stadium as well as cans years ago, and that's kind of the reason why.
Well, it's really funny, Rich, because that you mentioned that, because as I said, I'm a little older than you, and so, but when I can remember when you went to the ball game, the guy would come around and he'd open up a can and pour it in a cup.
Right.
And that's how you got it. You never got a can or a bottle or anything. You got it in the cup, and you'd see the guy would pour it right in front of you. And that's how he got paid, because he'd keep the empty cans and he could turn them back in and say, look, they had records. You gave me 24 cans. Here's 24 empty cans now.
Yeah.
So I am shocked that they're even giving cans, or then they went to the plastic bottles. Remember those?
Yeah.
They went to the plastic bottles because if a player got hurt, the glass could break, and if somebody hurled it at a player. So then they went to the plastic. I guess they figured that if you got hit, it wouldn't break, but it would still hurt, wouldn't it? Because if it's a full beer, but of course at those prices, who's stupid enough to throw a bottle of beer? But then I heard this story about Ryan Heyward, and I don't know. Let's go back to the old days where you get the beer vendor, or you went up to the place and they gave you a beer on tap. There's these bottles and stuff. I just don't get it.
Yeah, it seems like baseball's been very lucky over the last, say, 20 years that more of this stuff didn't take place. But now apparently with this, who knows what'll happen next. But interesting story there out of Cleveland. They have plenty of reason to drink beer. They're in first place there. Another Cleveland Indians outfielder is the subject of our next portion of the show. Marlon Byrd was suspended, of course, 162 games for a second positive test of a performance-enhancing substance. Byrd, who in 2013 claimed he used a drug only to treat enlarged breast tissue, had said that you'd have to be an idiot to test positive, and I was one of those idiots. Well, last week, again, he became one of those idiots again. In a statement released by his attorney. But The attorney claims also he consumed a tainted supplement. However, he will not appeal his suspension, probably ending his major league career. There was a lot of tweets sent out by different major league players after this was announced. Dan Harron, a pitcher, had asked that maybe he could have all of his home runs taken back against him that he's hit. Um, and a couple of others tweeted some other things. They weren't so happy with Bird. But yeah, Twitter's become sort of like the platform for players now to to make their comments back towards these type players that are suspended.
What a shame. He is 38, I believe, and I was trying to figure this out though. There is a chance he could come back, Rich, because he's only played this year. It's only we're about 55 games into the season or so. So he's going to actually serve 110 roughly games this year. He would only miss 52 games next year. So there is a chance that I don't know if he's signed with Cleveland next year, but there may be a chance that a team may pick him up and bring him back in June or July. And if they need an extra bat, but being a two-time loser, that's going to hurt his chances as well. Yes,
indeed. So the beat goes on as far as PEDs. There's more and more every day. It seems to be some of these guys get popped for this. But let's go on to my baseball website of the week. And I just found this this afternoon searching around for some interesting baseball websites. And Gary, I found pitcherlist.com, all one word. You can go on there if you have a different club that you want to scout all their starting pitchers. You can select the team right from the top of the menu. It'll show you a picture of each starting pitcher. And then upon clicking on their picture, it'll bring up all the pitches that they're known to throw. Of course, I'll pick the Mets here for you, Gary. Jacob deGrom, I clicked on. Gives you his stats, game logs, things like that, some advanced stats. And it also will show you diagrams and actual video of certain pitches that he likes to throw. It says he throws a fastball 62.3% of the time, tops out at about 95 miles an hour. Then you can click on the video right underneath of it, and it'll show you an example of it. Next up for him is a changeup. He only throws that about 12% of the time. He's got about an 85 mile an hour changeup going for him. Then a curve, approximately 9.7% of the time, and a slider, actually 15.7% of the time. So there's a nice repertoire there from Jacob deGrom, and you can do that with all the starting pitchers throughout the league. If you want to scout a pitcher that's playing your favorite team, just go on there and can learn a lot about those pitchers. I wouldn't be so surprised if some of the game players were checking this website out here. It's pretty entertaining.
Yeah. I was just checking out Noah Syndergaard to see what he threw. And of course, the big thing is the big fastball. So very interesting, Rich.
Yep. So check it out. Pitcherlist.com. You can find out a lot of great articles there, all about starting pitchers from all over the league. Well, that about wraps up our show for tonight, Gary. And as we said, we'd love to have our first sponsor, so to speak, listener sponsor. So go over to our Patreon page, and it's Patreon .com/MLB This Week. And we'd love to have you sponsor one of our shows.
Yes, most likely. Please help us out, patreon.com, and it'll really be a big help.
A lot more baseball talk coming your way in the month of June here. We appreciate you hanging in there, listening to our podcast, checking us out. And Gary, we'll talk again next week on our next edition.
Okay, Rich, have a great week, and have a great week, folks, and we'll see you all then.